Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Canny Ong. Canny Ong was born on July 18, 1974, in Malaysia. She was the younger of two daughters and enjoyed a very close relationship with her parents. In 1995, Canny moved to the United States to pursue higher education and a career in information technology. While living in the United States, Canny met a man named Brandon. He was a U.S. citizen and an ethnic Chinese whose parents emigrated from Singapore over 20 years ago. Initially, Canny and Brandon were just friends, but their friendship eventually blossomed into a romantic relationship. Brandon became a significant figure in Canny's life, supporting and helping her in various ways. They got married in 2001. Canny's life was on track in 2003. She was working as an analyst in San Diego, planning a future with her husband, and hoping to start a family. Her life changed dramatically that year. The trouble began when Canny's father, Ong Byung, was diagnosed with cancer. Canny decided to fly to Malaysia to support her family during this difficult time. On June 1, 2003, Canny and her husband, Brandon, arrived in Malaysia. However, Brandon returned to the USA after a few days, leaving Canny to care for her father in Kuala Lumpur. Despite the distance, Canny and Brandon stayed close through daily phone calls. They would talk for hours, sharing stories about their daily lives, including their two pets. Canny's father underwent surgery to remove a kidney, but fortunately, his health began to recover. As he improved, Canny planned her return to the USA, scheduling a flight for June 14, 2003. Canny organized a farewell dinner at a local restaurant the evening before her departure, and she invited her mother, sister, and closest friends to join her. That evening, June 13, 2003, Canny and her mother arrived at the designated meeting spot later than the others. They had trouble finding a parking spot in front of the mall, so Canny parked in the underground lot. However, her mother was concerned about the poor lighting in the lot, rather than the parking fee. Once they arrived at the second-floor restaurant, Canny was excited to reunite with her childhood friends, whom she hadn't seen in a long time. They spent a few hours catching up, but Canny soon noticed that her mother, Pearlie, was starting to look tired. When Canny asked if her mother wanted to head home, Pearlie said she had a lot to do that day, but was okay with leaving early and promised her friends she would be back soon. Canny, her mother, and her sister Elsie got up from the table to pay for their parking. They went to the payment terminal, which was located on the first floor, a floor above the underground parking lot. As they waited in line for the terminal, Canny realized she had left the parking ticket in their car. She asked her sister and mother to stay in line while she went back down to retrieve the ticket. Elsie and Pearlie waited for 10 more minutes, but Canny still hadn't returned. Then, her sister started calling her. The first call went unanswered, and the second one was sent to voicemail. This was unusual, and Elsie and Pearlie immediately sensed that something was wrong. They quickly went to the parking lot, where they were shocked to find that Canny's car was no longer there. They searched the parking lot several times to make sure, and after confirming that the car was indeed gone, they realized that Canny must have disappeared along with it. Pearlie was certain that something had happened to her daughter, as Canny would never leave without saying anything. Although the parking lot was poorly lit, it had surveillance cameras that might provide some clues about what had happened. The mall security initially refused to show Canny's relatives the footage, but relented after her mother begged for their help. At midnight, Pearlie and Elsie sat in front of a monitor and watched the shocking footage, which confirmed their worst fears. The footage revealed Canny's car speeding out of the underground parking lot, crashing through the barrier. Although the footage quality was poor, it was evident that a man was driving, with Canny in the passenger seat. Her body was positioned as if she was trying to distance herself from the driver, leaning against the door. Upon seeing the footage, Purley immediately filed a disappearance and kidnapping report at a police station. The police launched an investigation, while Canny's family and friends drove around Kuala Lumpur, desperately searching for her purple proton tiara. Meanwhile, Brandon, Canny's husband, began to feel a sense of unease. He tried calling his wife multiple times, but she didn't answer. He then contacted her mother, who informed him about the events that had transpired. The news of Canny's disappearance left Brandon in shock. Purley could hear him sobbing over the phone. As dawn broke, Canny's friends and family reluctantly returned home, their search efforts having yielded no results. The police disseminated information about the disappearance and conducted their own search, but unfortunately, it didn't lead to any breakthroughs. Even the footage from the mall's parking lot where Canny was kidnapped failed to provide any leads on identifying the driver of the car. More than 72 hours have passed since Canny's loved ones last saw her. Authorities believe that if she was kidnapped, it wasn't for ransom. If money was the motive, the kidnapper would have demanded it by now. A disturbing find was made by police when they discovered Canny's car left empty on a city street. The front right tire was severely damaged, indicating it had been driven on while flat for some time, causing it to shred. In the back of the car, a large red stain was found on the passenger seat. Forensic experts collected evidence, including scrapings from the back seat, fingerprints from the steering wheel, and other parts of the car. There were many clues found in the vehicle. Canny's family and friends held on to hope and prayed for her safe return. However, their hopes were crushed the next day after her car was found. On June 17th, a road worker detected a strong, foul smell coming from a manhole near the highway. Upon lifting the lid, he discovered a body that someone had attempted to burn using 2 car tires and sticks. A team of leading forensic experts from the Royal Malaysian Police immediately arrived at the scene. They found 2 car tires filled with concrete, which had been used as stands for road signs, lying on top of the body. It appeared that whoever had hidden the body, trying to make it harder to identify. Although the discovery of the body seemed to confirm the family's worst fears, Canny's mother, Purley, refused to believe that her daughter was dead without official confirmation. "Until they confirm it, we will continue to hope that she will turn up alive," she said. The family went to the morgue, but the doctor said that they couldn't confirm the identity of the body yet. Canny's family members provided DNA samples for comparative analysis. Unfortunately, the results confirmed their worst nightmare: the body was indeed that of their daughter, Canny. Some sources claim that before the DNA test results, Canny's family identified the jewelry on the body. However, as a loving mother, Purley held on to the hope that her daughter was still alive until the very end. The emotional torture she endured is unimaginable. The autopsy revealed that Canny had 2 stab wounds to her abdomen, and a medical forensics expert found signs of strangulation. A cloth was tied around her neck in multiple knots, and semen was found inside her body, which served as a source of DNA. A few days after the body was discovered, an incident raised questions about the work of police. An undercover policeman, Subramaniam Ravichandran, reported to his superiors that on the night of Canny's disappearance, he was on duty with his partner, patrolling the streets of Kuala Lumpur at night on their motorcycles. Both officers were dressed in civilian clothes. They noticed a car parked incorrectly, taking up half the road, and stopped to investigate if anyone was inside. Ravichandran approached the driver's door and saw a man behind the wheel with a woman in the passenger seat. He knocked on the window, and when the man lowered it partially, Ravichandran displayed his police ID and asked what they were doing. The driver replied they were just chatting and not doing anything illegal. Ravichandran then requested to see their IDs. As the driver handed over the documents, she in the passenger seat made unusual hand gestures, seemingly asking for help, but stopped whenever her assumed boyfriend looked at her. Noticing this, Ravichandran asked the driver to step out of the car. However, the driver responded aggressively, claiming Ravichandran was not a police officer but a thief. He then raised the window and reached for the ignition. Realizing the car might drive off, Ravichandran drew his pistol and shot the right front wheel. Despite this, the car sped away. Ravichandran and his partner pursued on a motorcycle but were unable to catch up, which is puzzling given the car had a flat tire. At the time, the Malaysian police department was in a state of disarray, which might explain why the officer didn't call for backup or report the incident. The car with a flat tire was a purple Proton Tiara, driven by 27-year-old Ahmad Najib bin Aris, accompanied by a woman named Canny Ong. Although the police chase did not result in an immediate arrest, the officers managed to obtain documents from the driver. Tragically, Canny Ong was later found dead. It is possible that if the officer had acted differently during the encounter, the outcome might have been different. Unfortunately, Ravichandran only informed his superiors about the incident after Canny's body was discovered. The only positive outcome of that night was that the police had obtained documents that could help identify the suspect. Besides Canny's family, many Malaysians attended her farewell ceremony. Her death was a devastating loss for her husband, Brandon. Meanwhile, the police launched a search for Ahmad Najib. They discovered that he didn't live at the address listed in his documents, but his name was genuine, providing multiple leads to track him down. The police searched for Ahmad Najib's name in the Registry of Documented Marriages and the National Agency of Social Support. They found a match, revealing that Ahmad Najib bin Aris was born and raised in Muar, Malaysia. He was the second of 4 siblings and had dropped out of school to work and support his family. In 1998, he moved from Muar to Kuala Lumpur, where he got married and had 2 children. Since 2000, he had worked as a cabin cleaner for Malaysia Airlines. Knowing the name of Ahmad Najib's wife and her workplace, the police began surveillance. She worked at a metropolitan bank, and after her shift ended, undercover police officers followed her to determine her home address. Now that they knew where Ahmad Najib lived, the police had to ensure he was inside the house without alerting him. For 3 days, they monitored the house, but Ahmad Najib didn't appear. At one point, investigators doubted whether Ahmad Najib still lived with his family, but this was a hasty conclusion. On the 4th day of surveillance, at around 4 a.m., a cab pulled up to the house, and Ahmad Najib stepped out. Within a minute, he was handcuffed and taken to the police station for questioning. News of the arrest and the suspect's identity quickly reached the press. Many people who knew Ahmad Najib were shocked to learn that he was suspected of kidnapping and killing Canny Ong. Those who knew him described Ahmad Najib as a devoted husband, a caring father of 2, and an overall good person. However, investigators soon discovered that he may have been hiding a darker side. During the initial interrogation, Ahmad Najib remained calm and requested to speak only with the head of the Criminal Investigation Division. It wasn't until he was presented with evidence linking him to Canny Ong that Ahmad Najib began to deny any wrongdoing. His confidence seemed to wane as the evidence mounted. Investigators showed him 2 IDs that he had given to an officer on the night of Canny Ong's kidnapping. They also revealed that they had found bloodstains on his jacket and jeans, which DNA analysis would likely confirm to be Canny Ong's blood. After realizing the officers had solid evidence and were not bluffing, Ahmad Najib confessed to kidnapping and killing Canny Ong. Within 10 days of the kidnapping, on June 23, 2003, he was taken to court, where he repeated his confession. The police then conducted an investigative experiment where Ahmad Najib showed them all the locations he had been with Canny Ong. He provided a detailed account of how he forced her to be intimate with him multiple times, how he took her life, and how he attempted to dispose of her body. Evidence supporting his statements was found at all the locations he led the police to. The investigation began at the underground parking lot, where cameras captured footage of Ahmad Najib. According to his statement, He was waiting for his former boss, who had fired him and whom he sought revenge against. However, the claim about the former boss was never verified. Hiding in the darkness, he observed Canny Ong searching for something in her car and seized the opportunity to take advantage of the situation. He forcefully pushed her into the car, issuing threats that if she attempted to escape or seek help, she would face dire consequences. Overwhelmed, Canny Ong became disoriented and obediently followed his instructions. Next, he took the driver's seat and sped out of the parking lot. After crashing through a barrier, he stopped in an industrial area, where he began to harass Canny Ong. Just as this was happening, a plainclothes police officer approached the car. Ahmad Najib falsely told the officer that he didn't know he had taken the wrong person until the officer asked him and his victim for their identification. Even assuming Ahmad Najib had intended to kidnap his former boss, his guilt remains unchanged. Undoubtedly, his former boss would have suffered the same fate as Canny Ong. According to Ahmad Najib's account, he managed to evade the pursuing officer. Despite the officer possessing his documents, Ahmad Najib failed to consider releasing Canny Ong. Instead, he stopped the car on the street to replace a tire damaged by a bullet. Nearby, a car containing a woman was parked at the spot where he had pulled over. He approached she and asked for a car jack, intending to change his tire. However, he noticed Canny Ong signaling to she, who then handed him the jack. He abandoned the idea of changing the tire and drove off immediately. Later, he stopped at a secluded area and used a knife to threaten Canny Ong, forcing her to engage in intimate acts with him. Afterwards, he drove to another district where he coerced Canny Ong into satisfying him again, with both of them in the back seat. Canny Ong pleaded for mercy, but he took her life instead. He then disposed of her body in a manhole near a highway, moved the car to another location, and left it there. 16 hours later, he returned to the scene with a gasoline canister in an attempt to conceal evidence of the crime. DNA analysis confirmed that the semen found in Canny Ong's body belonged to Ahmad Najib bin Aris. His DNA was also discovered in the car, along with his fingerprints, providing further irrefutable proof of his guilt. Additionally, the analysis revealed that the blood on his jacket and jeans belonged to Canny Ong. The trial began on September 15, 2003, 3 months after Canny Ong's death. This high-profile case drew widespread attention from the Malaysian media and public. The trial attracted not only ordinary Malaysians and journalists but also individuals seeking to boost their reputation, including numerous attorneys representing Ahmad Najib. Despite admitting guilt during the investigation, overwhelming evidence, including DNA proof, Ahmad Najib changed his stance after consulting 6 attorneys. At his first trial, he claimed his confession was made under police pressure. However, the judge before whom Ahmad Najib confessed immediately after his arrest testified that there were no signs of physical abuse, and Ahmad Najib appeared calm and relaxed. The attorneys then shifted their strategy, arguing that Canny Ong was in the car with Ahmad Najib voluntarily. They suggested that Canny Ong, a black belt in Taekwondo, should have attempted to escape if she were being held against her will. However, this attempt to blame Canny Ong was rejected, as people respond differently to critical situations. However, another claim surfaced, stating that Canny Ong had consensual intimacy with Ahmad Najib and that Canny Ong's death was caused by strangulation used to heighten the experience. Forensic experts disagreed with and rejected this account of what happened. The cloth around Canny's neck was tied in multiple knots, suggesting that Canny Ong had no intention of loosening it. Indeed, the cloth was so tight that the skin beneath was the only area on the body not affected by the fire. Furthermore, the cloth was a type used for cleaning plane windows, and given the defendant's job as a cabin cleaner, this linked him more closely to the crime. Additionally, the lawyers struggled to explain the stab wounds on Canny's body. At this point, Ahmad Najib's attorneys advised him to remain silent and not testify. Many questioned why Canny didn't escape the car when she had at least 2 chances to do so. On February 23, 2005, Ahmad Najib bin Aris was convicted of all charges connected to the crime committed against Canny Ong. The evidence pointed to him as the sole perpetrator. Ahmad Najib received the maximum sentence under Malaysian law, 20 years imprisonment and 10 strokes of the cane for violating Canny Ong's sexual integrity, plus the death penalty for causing her death. In Malaysia, the death penalty is carried out by hanging, a method that differs significantly from the lethal injection used in some other countries, such as the USA. Ahmad Najib's lawyers attempted to appeal the sentence twice but were unsuccessful both times. In 2010, Ahmad Najib petitioned the head of state to commute his death sentence to life imprisonment, maintaining his innocence. However, his plea for clemency was rejected. More than 13 years after Canny Ong's death, on September 23, 2016, Ahmad Najib's sentence was carried out. He was 40 years old at the time of his execution. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Bianca Roberson. Bianca Roberson, born on October 17, 1998, Bianca grew up to be a remarkable individual. She excelled at Bayard Rustin High School, earning straight A's and graduating with honors. Her impressive academic record earned her a 4-year merit scholarship to Jacksonville University in Florida, where she planned to major in criminal justice and pursue her dream of becoming an FBI forensic agent. Bianca was a multi-talented young woman who had been involved in various activities throughout her life. She was a Girl Scout, a cheerleader, and a basketball player. She also had a passion for music, taking lessons in flute, violin, clarinet, and guitar. Additionally, she was an artist. Bianca lived with her mother and maternal grandmother, Josephine Perry, and was excited to experience the independence and challenges of dorm life. However, her plans were tragically cut short. On June 28, 2017, Bianca, her mother, and grandmother went shopping at Walmart to prepare for her upcoming move to Florida. Bianca Roberson was tragically killed in a car accident on a road she knew well. The incident occurred just 10 minutes after she left a Walmart parking lot. Witnesses quickly called 911, and first responders rushed to the scene. Unfortunately, paramedics were unable to save Bianca, and she was pronounced dead at the scene. Initial observations suggested that Bianca's severe head injuries were caused by her car veering off the road. However, as police interviewed eyewitnesses, a crucial detail emerged. A witness reported that Bianca's car had collided with a red pickup truck, which had fled the scene without stopping. As she drove home to meet her granddaughter, Bianca's grandmother was worried about the traffic and wondered if it might be related to Bianca. However, she had no idea that the cause of the traffic jam was actually a car crash involving Bianca. When she arrived home, she was met with devastating news. 2 police officers were waiting to inform her that Bianca had been killed in the accident. For Michelle, Bianca's mother, the news was almost too much to bear. Losing a child is every parent's worst nightmare. Michelle, a nurse from Delaware County, was still grieving the loss of her 22-year-old son, ML James Rowley, who had passed away from a heart condition in 2013. She had hoped that time would ease her pain, but instead, it had only intensified with the loss of her daughter. Michelle Robertson is struggling to cope with the loss of her second child. "I'm just existing," she said, feeling lost and without purpose. Her children were her reason for getting up in the morning, and now she feels like a mom without kids. After her divorce from Rodney Robertson in 2006, they managed to put aside their differences and work together as amicable co-parents thanks to their daughter Bianca. Michelle acknowledged that their divorce was not easy, but Bianca's presence helped to calm the tension. "Bianca didn't like it when I spoke harshly to her mother, and she would correct me," he said. Bianca's love for her family, especially her father, brought them closer together. Rodney admitted that Bianca was his favorite, and her devotion to family was inspiring. Bianca's father proudly said that his daughter was one step closer to achieving her dream of becoming an FBI forensic specialist. Bianca was excited to be on her own, but her future career was her main focus. Her hard work had paid off, as she had received a 4-year merit scholarship to Jacksonville University, one of the 3 schools that had accepted her out of the 4 she had applied to. Bianca's father said she had also been accepted to Coastal Carolina and the University of Georgia. Investigators were seeking CCTV footage to confirm the initial belief that Bianca's car veered off the road after colliding with a red pickup truck. If this were the case, it would imply that Bianca's death was no accident, but rather a deliberate act that required the police to identify a perpetrator. However, the truth revealed during the investigation proved even more stunning. While awaiting the CCTV footage, a significant development in the case occurred. It was initially assumed that Bianca's death resulted from her car crashing and hitting her head. Yet, during the autopsy, forensic experts made a startling discovery: there was a bullet in Bianca's head. This revelation drastically altered the course of the investigation. What initially seemed like an accident and later a collision with a red pickup truck was revealed to be a death caused by a gunshot wound to the head. The autopsy report's findings prompted detectives to meet with Bianca's family, bringing devastating news that her death was no accident. This revelation sent shockwaves, especially for her mother, Michelle, who couldn't fathom why anyone would harm her daughter. Bianca had a close-knit relationship with those around her, and her family couldn't identify anyone who might have wished her harm. Desperate for answers, the Robertson family relied on investigators to identify the person responsible for Bianca's tragic death. Upon reviewing the security footage from the Walmart her family visited on the day of her death, detectives found no suspicious activity. The detectives closely examined the family's actions from the moment they left their cars to the time they departed the parking lot. They dismissed the possibility that someone from Walmart could have followed Bianca and shot her, as she had not argued with anyone during their visit. The family had simply shopped, loaded their purchases into Bianca's car, and left. The investigation suggested that the motive for Bianca's death might be linked to an incident that occurred while she was driving home on the highway. Bianca's mother recalled, "We packed all the bags into Bianca's car," referring to the 2009 Chevy Malibu they had purchased for her 16th birthday from CarMax. Michelle recalled that her mother had chosen the car Bianca was driving when she first got her permit. According to Michelle, Bianca's mother said that Bianca had gotten everything she wanted, but Michelle didn't think of her as spoiled. Instead, she believed Bianca was simply loved and also willing to work for the things she desired. In fact, Bianca started her first job at McDonald's when she was 15 and soon switched to a dietary aide position at the Whitehorse Village Retirement Community in Delaware County. Michelle remembered that she had received a large number of letters and cards from the residents at Whitehorse Village who adored Bianca. After the police obtained traffic footage from CCTV cameras, Michelle pointed out that there were no cameras at the exact location where Bianca veered off the road. However, there was a camera about a mile away. To help illustrate the location, Michelle suggested looking at Google Maps. According to the map, Bianca lost control of her car where 2 lanes merged into one. When investigators reviewed the recording, they found evidence that supported the account of Bianca's encounter with the driver of the red pickup truck. The footage showed their cars traveling side by side, approaching a point where their lanes merged into one. It's possible that the conflict began when one driver failed to yield to the other. Given the tragic outcome, investigators inferred that the driver of the red pickup truck might have been the one who fired the shot. However, the poor quality of the footage made it impossible to read the pickup truck's license plates or see the driver's face. Nevertheless, from that point on, the driver of the pickup truck became the primary suspect in Bianca Roberson's death. Detectives were tasked with identifying the man, but they only had a blurry image to work with. After inquiring with Bianca's family members, it became clear that none of them knew anyone who owned a red pickup truck. The police then re-interviewed the witnesses who were present at the scene and those who had called 911, but unfortunately, none of them had caught a glimpse of the vehicle's license plate. The Bianca Roberson family has received an outpouring of support from friends, strangers, and people of all ages since Bianca's passing. A vigil was held just 2 days after her death, and many have reached out to share their stories and condolences. Bianca's family describes her as a selfless and compassionate person who always put the needs of others before her own. According to her mother, Michelle, Bianca would often take in children who were in need, even if it meant sneaking them into their home without permission. When confronted about her actions, Bianca would simply say that she wanted to help others in the same way she would want someone to help her if she were in a similar situation. This kind of empathy and kindness was evident in many aspects of Bianca's life, including the time she witnessed a car accident and immediately asked her mother if they could stop to help. A kind-hearted woman's first instinct was to invite those eating alone to join her family for dinner. In the aftermath of Bianca's car accident, investigators analyzed footage from distant cameras to determine the direction of the red pickup truck involved in the incident. To gather more details about the truck, including its brand, model, and license plate, they required higher quality footage. The police sought the public's assistance through the media, asking anyone with information about the truck to come forward. Following the accident, the pickup truck turned towards Poi Pike. To find evidence, detectives visited nearby houses and shops, searching for cameras that might have captured the truck. After an extensive search, they found a camera with good quality footage, taken around 5 minutes after witnesses called 911 to report Bianca's car accident. Upon analyzing this footage, detectives saw the red pickup truck driving by shortly after the incident. The investigation continued, but the license plate of the suspect's car remained unknown, and it was unclear if the car in the footage was the same one or just a similar vehicle. However, 2 days after the incident, a new lead emerged when a woman contacted the police, claiming to have seen the car they were searching for. She also reported seeing the driver's face. She described the car as a red pickup truck that overtook her, stopped at the Poi Pike intersection, and then turned left. This information was crucial in narrowing down the search area and also revealed that the pickup truck in the footage was not the actual suspect's vehicle, but rather a similar-looking truck. Her description helped a forensic artist create a sketch of the suspect, who was identified as a white male, 25 to 35 years old, with brown hair and a stubble beard. The police released the suspect's sketch, hoping someone would recognize the person and come forward. They showed the sketch to Bianca's family, but no one recognized the individual. As the investigation continued, detectives began to consider the possibility that Bianca's death was a hate crime. To gather more evidence, the police canvassed the area where the red pickup truck was last seen, visiting homes and businesses near the intersection where it turned left. They were searching for a high-quality surveillance recording that could provide answers to their questions. Their efforts paid off when a homeowner, who lived less than half a mile from the intersection, provided the police with a recording from their driveway surveillance camera. By estimating the time it would take to drive from the crime scene to the homeowner's location, the police quickly found the relevant footage. Although the new footage was of better quality than the previous one, its angle made it impossible for the police to identify the car or its driver. The police worked hard to find another recording from a closer camera, and they got lucky. Although the license plate was not visible, they were able to identify some unique features of the car. These features included a sticker on the right side window, a vertical dent on the passenger door, and damage to the hood. With these details, the police had a much better chance of finding the car. The police sought the public's help in finding the truck and its driver by offering a $5,000 reward for any information that could aid in the investigation. They were confident that someone would recognize the distinctive vehicle. 3 days after Bianca Roberson's death, a lawyer contacted the police station on behalf of a client who wanted to turn himself in, stating that his client was connected to the incident that resulted in Bianca's death. The incident occurred on a recent Wednesday at approximately 5:30 p.m. Bianca Roberson, an 18-year-old who had just graduated from Westchester Ruston High School, was driving on Route 100, a two-lane highway, on her way to Jacksonville University. Her life was full of promise, with a loving family and a bright future ahead. As she approached the merge with Route 202, the road narrowed from 2 lanes to 1. A common merge on a southeastern Pennsylvania highway turned deadly last Wednesday when a dispute over positioning escalated into violence. Bianca Roberson was merging from 2 lanes to 1 when a man in a red pickup truck, also merging, became agitated and shot her in the head. The suspect, 28-year-old David Desper of Pennsylvania, surrendered to police with his lawyer. Although he refused to testify, he consented to a search of his home and revealed the location of his pickup truck. David was subsequently arrested and charged with Bianca Roberson's murder. The police tracked down the suspect's vehicle, a pickup truck, at a location David had previously mentioned. Unique features on the truck, such as stickers on the windows and damage to the body, made it unmistakably clear that it was the same truck involved in the crime. The investigators searched David's residence and found the firearm that was used to shoot and kill Bianca Roberson. Despite this major breakthrough in the case, the authorities remained baffled as to the killer's motivation. Over 800 loved ones and members of the community attended a heart-wrenching farewell ceremony at the St. Paul's Baptist Church in the suburban Westchester borough, which lies approximately 25 miles. During the funeral service, many people paid tribute to she, including her brothers, officials from her high school, the chief admissions officer from the university she was set to attend, and friends. In his eulogy, Pastor Wayne Croft Sr. drew a comparison between the shooter and 2 other infamous cases: George Zimmerman, who shot and killed Trayvon Martin, a black teenager, in Florida in 2012, and was acquitted of murder in 2013, and Michael Dunn, who shot and killed Jordan Davis, another black teenager, in Florida in 2012, after a dispute over music. Dunn was convicted and sentenced to life in prison plus 90 years. The pastor expressed the sentiment of the black community, stating that regardless of whether Bianca's murder was a result of road rage or racism, the fact remains that a brilliant young black woman's life was lost. During the trial in September 2018, David Desper was asked to explain his motive for committing the crime. Instead of providing an answer, he requested forgiveness from Bianca's family. For Bianca's parents, the thought of facing their daughter's alleged killer was daunting. To show their support and unity, Rodney had arranged for family members and friends to wear T-shirts with Bianca's face on the front as they gathered at the Chester County Government Services Center. The family of Bianca Roberson wore bracelets with a poignant message: "Bianca Roberson, a rose in God's garden." They also held a banner that read, "Justice for Bianca Nicole Roberson," a reminder of the tragic event that took her life on June 28, 2017. Rodney, Bianca's father, expressed his uncertainty about how he would react when he saw the man responsible for his daughter's murder. "I don't know what I'll do when I see him," he said. "The man who held the gun that took my daughter's life, he just took her dreams away. He had no right to do that." Michelle, Bianca's mother, struggled to come to terms with the loss of her child. "I want to hold her, comfort her, and bring her back," she said through tears. The prosecutor argued that the traffic conflict occurred because Bianca failed to yield when their lanes merged into one. In response, David Desper rolled down the passenger side window and fired a shot. Realizing the severity of his actions, David Desper fled the scene, leaving his pickup truck with a friend in Pennsylvania, and attempted to escape to Delaware. However, after his sketch and the distinctive features of his pickup truck were publicized in the news, David Desper decided to hire a lawyer and surrender. The police investigated his social media accounts and interviewed his friends but found no evidence to suggest that the crime was motivated by bias. As a result, David Desper was not charged with a hate crime. District Attorney Hogan stated that there was no indication that the crime was racially motivated or a hate crime. However, many people disagreed with this assessment. Before the sentencing, the defense portrayed David Desper as harmless and immature for his age, describing him as a big kid who enjoyed playing with cars in his free time. They argued that David Desper had essentially handed the case to the government by turning himself in. The defense claimed that David Desper was driving home when another car startled him, causing him to fire the gun. They maintained that David Desper was not a menacing individual. Prosecutor Chris Miller countered that a 28-year-old man driving with a loaded firearm is not a big kid. He emphasized that David Desper's actions were those of a responsible adult. Ironically, David Desper's own mother had shared a Facebook post about the police searching for the person who murdered Bianca Roberson, unaware that the suspect was her own son. Wendy Desper expressed her love for Bianca's family and apologized for her son's actions. "I'm so sorry for what my son did," she said, as her son wept. Rodney Robertson struggled to speak through tears as he addressed his daughter's killer. "I have simple questions for the defendant," he said. "Why did you shoot my daughter? Was it because of her youth, her race, her gender, or just because you wanted to go first on the road? Was it simply because you were having a bad day?" Rodney continued, "All my dreams for Bianca were coming true until the day the defendant took her life. Now, all I have left of Bianca are my memories." David Desper pleaded guilty to third-degree murder. The court sentenced him to 40 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 20 years. Judge Anne-Marie Wheatcraft became emotional as she announced the sentence, telling Desper, "I don't believe you were afraid, I believe it was anger." County Judge Anne-Marie Wheatcraft imposed the maximum sentence of 20 to 40 years for that grade of homicide. David Desper attempted to appeal the sentence, but his appeal was denied. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Su Xingqi. Tam Xing Fai, a 43-years-old faculty member, was noticeably absent from work, sparking concern among his colleagues. On July 4th, a coworker named Ma tried to reach him on his mobile phone at 11 a.m., but there was no answer. Ma wasn't immediately worried, assuming Tam Xing Fai was busy taking care of his family's adopted dog, which had a skin disease and was scheduled to visit the vet. However, when Xing Fai failed to show up for a meeting at the university's finance department on July 5th, Ma's concern grew. He tried calling Xing Fai's mobile phone again, but there was still no answer. Unfortunately, Ma didn't have Xing Fai's landline phone number, so he couldn't try contacting him that way. By July 6th, Xing Fai had been absent from work for 2 days with no communication with his colleagues. One of his co-workers finally reported the situation to the finance department, which prompted Xing Fai's superiors to call his landline phone. Unfortunately, no one answered that call either. The police contacted the library where Helen Tong Yenyi, the 33-years-old wife of the missing man. Library staff reported that she was also absent from work without prior notice. They, originally from Zhongshan in Guangdong Province, China, had been married for 11 years and had 2 daughters, Hiu Man, 10, and Hiu Ing, 7 years old. Despite their difficult living conditions and financial struggles, the family was known to be kind, happy, and cheerful. They lived in an abandoned recycling station on Waju South Road, but Xing Fai often took his daughters on outings to have fun in town. Their children were well behaved, and the family seemed to be a happy one. Given their circumstances, it was possible that the family had decided to take a vacation together. However, something unexpected must have happened, preventing them from returning. Xing Fai's colleagues repeatedly tried to contact him by phone. hoping for a response. Eventually, someone answered, but to their surprise, it was a middle-aged man with an unfamiliar voice, not a member of the family. A man claiming to be Xing Fai's cousin called his workplace, stating that the family had taken a summer vacation to Guangdong province in mainland China. He allegedly received Xing Fai's phone for safekeeping, but couldn't provide a return date for the family. However, the call only heightened suspicion among Xing Fai's co-workers. They found it out of character for Xing Fai to suddenly leave without notice, as he was a diligent and organized person. If he planned a vacation, he would have arranged it with his children's school in advance. Moreover, the family was responsible for 9 stray dogs, raising concerns about who would care for them. Xing Fai's family situation also raised questions. His father, a sailor, had gone missing, and his mother was living in a nursing home due to illness. Xing Fai regularly visited her every week, making it unlikely that he would abandon her to go on vacation. Eventually, the police were called. One of Xing Fai's colleagues accompanied them to his home, an abandoned recycling station in Pingqi village. During the trip, a suspicious person was spotted. A short man was seen from a distance near the Xing Fai family's fence before quickly disappearing. Initially, no attention was paid to this, and they continued on. Upon arrival, they found the gate to Xing Fai's home locked. The police investigated the property and interviewed the neighbors. The abandoned recycling station covered a large area of approximately 450 square meters, but most of it was empty space, about 350 square meters of flower beds. The construction area was only about 90 square meters, and the building was constructed illegally. The original owner had built several tin houses on the site, using it as a waste recycling facility. A stone house on the opposite side was used as a pig farm, with very few people living in the area. As a result, the police only had one neighbor to question, an elderly woman named Wang who lived alone across the street. Wang claimed to have known the family's schedule and reported that they usually tended to their garden in the afternoon. Su Wang had limited knowledge of the family's personal lives, mainly due to their remote location. She was aware that the family didn't receive many visitors, and the only relative she knew of was Xing Fai's cousin, Su Xingqi. Wang didn't have information about Su Xingqi's address or that of Xing Fai's uncle, who supposedly lived in a nearby stone house. When the police questioned Xing Fai's colleague, they learned that a cousin had answered Xing Fai's phone, leading the police to believe it was Su Xingqi. However, Wang clarified that she didn't know Su Xingqi's address. She did report hearing cries for help from the house on July 5. In response, the police conducted door-to-door inquiries in Pingqi village and eventually tracked down a man matching Wang's description at a stone house on Waju Road. The man, 42 years old Zhu Shenqi, confirmed that he was Xing Fai's cousin and stated that he occasionally visited the family home to help with renovations and gardening. When questioned about the phone call, Su Xingqi maintained that the family had gone on vacation to China. On July 5, Xing Fai visited his mother at the nursing home and then returned home to inform Su Xingqi that he planned to travel to Danyuan, China for a few days. Due to the high roaming fees, Xing Fai asked Su Xingqi to hold on to his Hong Kong mobile phone until he returned. The person seen fleeing the scene by police and Xing Fai's colleague was actually Su Xingqi, who was leaving after feeding the family dogs. Su Xingqi's behavior and expressions were observed, and he appeared to be telling the truth. His story seemed consistent, and there were no obvious discrepancies. When asked if he had a key to the family home, Su Xingqi denied it. Despite finding Su Xingqi, the police continued their investigation, going door to door in the village. A local resident reported a stranger borrowed money from a villager, leading to a heated argument. The villager threatened to seek compensation from Xing Fai's family, who were struggling financially due to his mother's hospitalization and existing debts. The villagers initially believed the stranger was not Su Xingqi, but they suspected the family might be hiding to escape their debts. However, when the police inquired about Su Xingqi, the villagers revealed that he had been dishonest. They confirmed that Su Xingqi regularly visited the Xing Fai's home to perform maintenance and repairs, and he was always able to enter the house on his own, even when no one else was present. This information led the police to conclude that Su Xingqi must have had a key or access to the home Xing Fai's. In fact, he did have a key, which Xing Fai had given to him, as witnessed by Wang. When the police asked Su Xingqi for the key, he initially denied owning one, claiming he used a spare key for renovations that he had returned. However, his demeanor had changed, and he was avoiding key details. When the police threatened to search his home, Su Xingqi became agitated and suddenly remembered another house key that he had not returned. He retrieved the key from his dresser and handed it over to the police. Although Su Xingqi's behavior was suspicious, there was no direct evidence linking him to the family's disappearance. As a result, the police placed him under surveillance while continuing their investigation. During their investigation, police used a spare key to enter the home, where they found a scene of disarray and evidence of a ransacking. Fresh blood stains on the walls suggested that a violent incident had occurred on the property. The presence of a sink full of dirty dishes in the kitchen raised suspicions about the family's claim to have traveled to China, as it seemed unlikely they would have left their home in such a state before departing. A search of the master bedroom turned up the family's identification cards in a dresser, which prompted the lead investigator to contact the border crossing office. The office reported that the family had not left Hong Kong. Further investigation of the house uncovered a blood-stained shirt in a side room and a blood-stained plastic water pipe in the corner. Police then deployed sniffer dogs to search for additional evidence and potentially locate the missing family members. The dogs detected a scent and discovered blood stains under recently disturbed soil 9 meters away. Furthermore, despite it being summer vacation, their children, Hiu Man and Hiu Eng, were enrolled in summer school, indicating that the family would not have been on vacation. It became clear that the family had been victims of a crime, so a special team was set up to investigate. Due to the late hour, the police cordoned off the scene, restricted access to Pingqi village. Su Xingqi was confined to home. He was the prime suspect in the case. Su Xingqi promptly confessed. According to Su Xingqi's statement, he was from Huanpu in Guangdong province and typically resided with his sister, wife, and 2 sons, aged 15 and 16, who suffered from memory issues. Su Xingqi previously earned a living selling motorcycles in Junction City. However, following Guangdong's ban on motorcycles in 2006, sales plummeted. Financial struggles led him to reach out to his cousin, Xing Fai, in Hong Kong, seeking employment opportunities. Xing Fai helped Su Xingqi secure a construction job that provided a daily salary of 500 Hong Kong dollars, including accommodation and meals. After working for half a month, Su Xingqi became dissatisfied with his salary, which was reduced to 220 Hong Kong dollars due to company deductions. He impulsively quit his job and returned to China. However, in 2007, a typhoon damaged his home, and he needed money for repairs. Su Xingqi asked Xing Fai to help him find work in Hong Kong again. When Xing Fai couldn't find him a job, he proposed an alternative arrangement. Xing Fai would pay Su Xingqi from his own salary to help with household chores and repairs at his home. Su Xingqi accepted this offer and began traveling to Hong Kong every other month to work on Xing Fai's home and garden. Su Xingqi claims that he and Tong Yanyi, Xing Fai's wife, began a clandestine romantic relationship. However, Xing Fai discovered their relationship on July 3rd. On July 5th, Su Xingqi accompanied Xing Fai to a nursing home to visit his mother. Su Xingqi snuck out of the nursing home to return home and continue his affair with Yanyi. Unexpectedly, Xing Fai returned home early and, in a fit of rage, physically confronted Su Xingqi. In a state of panic, the man grabbed a 25-centimeter long fruit knife and stabbed Xing Fai until he fell to the ground, dead. Overwhelmed by what had just happened, he wanted to turn himself in to the police. However, Su Xingqi refused to let that happen. Since he couldn't change his mind, Su Xingqi decided to kill Xing Fai. Su Xingqi found some wires in the corner of the room, charged at him, knocked him to the ground, and tied his hands behind his back. Su Xingqi then covered Xing Fai mouth and nose with tape and put a plastic bag over his head. Before this, their two children were in their bedroom watching cartoons. They heard the commotion and their parents warning to run away, but instead, they ran towards their parents and saw their father dead and Su Xingqi in the process of killing their mother. The children ran back to their room, crying, and locked the door. Since the parent was already tied up, Su Xingqi left to pursue the children. Su Xingqi picked up a pair of pliers, opened the door, and used more wires to restrain the children. He tied their hands behind their backs, covered their mouths and noses with tape, and put plastic bags over their heads. The children, Hiu Ing and Hiu Man, also suffocated shortly after. After killing the whole family, Su Xingqi was at a loss of what to do next. He turned to his home to think it over. He thought that hiding them in a ditch or body of water would be too easy to find, and that dismembering them would be too exhausting and time-consuming. So he settled on burying them on their own property. On July 6th, he returned to the home to try and clean up as many blood stains as he could find. He then got to work on digging the hole. He dug a hole deep and wide enough to hold the family of 4 and quickly placed their bodies inside of it. He also disposed of the murder weapons in the pit before filling it back in. The police believed Su Xingqi's story, despite being skeptical about his motive, and took him to the location where he claimed the crime had taken place. He pointed out the spot where the sharp knife, water pipe, iron pliers, and other tools used in the crime were hidden. On July 7th, the police called in the fire department to assist in unearthing the remains. The firefighters arrived with excavation tools and gas masks, as the bodies were buried near a septic tank. However, they quickly encountered a problem when they hit a layer of cement while digging. It turned out that Su Xingqi had failed to mention in his confession that he had filled the pit with cement before covering it up. The firefighters were unable to break through the cement with their tools, and the police had to call in a private engineering company for assistance. The engineers arrived with high-grade tools and began drilling through the concrete slab. However, when they reached a point where they saw human hair, they became uneasy and refused to continue digging, not wanting to encounter a dead body. It took the police 13 hours to persuade them to resume the excavation. After excavating the pit, authorities found it to be 2.5 meters wide and 6 feet deep. The bodies of the 4 family members were discovered at the bottom, all barefoot and wearing only t-shirts and shorts. Xing Fai's body was at the very bottom. His hands and feet were bound with electric wire, and he had multiple stab wounds to his abdomen, back, and neck, with his clothes stained red with blood. The other family members were similarly bound with electric wire. Yanyi's mouth and nose were covered with tape, her hands and feet were bound, and her face was distorted. 2 family members, Hiu Man and Hiu Ing, showed no obvious signs of trauma, leading police to suspect they may have been buried alive. Su Xingqi was formally arrested and interrogated. During the interrogation, he altered his confession. He admitted that he lied about the affair. Shan Hui kicked Su Xingqi out of the house and banned him from returning. Despite this, Su Xingqi came back to apologize and was surprisingly forgiven by Xing Fai. Su Xingqi returned to the house on July 3rd to start working, and it seemed that his relationship with Xing Fai had been repaired. However, On July 4th, Su Xingqi attempted to molest a family member. Su Xingqi fled the house in a rage, not wanting to alert the neighbors. The next day, Su Xingqi tried to force his way into the house again, claiming he wanted to apologize. However, Xing Fai had anticipated this and returned home early. They got into an argument, which escalated into Su Xingqi stabbing Xing Fai. Su Xingqi's later confession matched his initial one, but with the additional detail of filling a makeshift grave with cement. However, after the bodies were taken away for autopsy, it was discovered that Su Xingqi's account of the events was inaccurate. The autopsy revealed that Xing Fai's murder was more brutal than initially described. Xing Fai had sustained 9 stab wounds to the head and neck, nearly 80 stab wounds to the body, and 10 stab wounds to the hands and feet. Contrary to Su Xingqi's claim, Xing Fai was strangled, not suffocated with a plastic bag. Hiu Ying's cause of death was the only accurate part of Su Xingqi's account. Forensic analysis of the home found at the cutlery and dishes did not have the family's DNA on them, but they did have Su Xingqi's DNA. This suggested that Xing Fai was not killed in the kitchen, but rather elsewhere in the house. The investigation also revealed that the murder was premeditated, as the cement used to bury the bodies had been purchased by Su Xingqi prior to the murder. Furthermore, the weapon used was not a kitchen knife from the family, but rather one belonging to Su Xingqi. Additional investigations by the police found that the family's bank cards had been used at an ATM after the time of death, but no money could be withdrawn due to repeated failed PIN number guesses. The cash and bank cards belonging to the family were also missing. Su Xingqi's motive for the crime was robbery, and it was premeditated. Whenever the police pointed out inconsistencies in his story, he would suddenly come up with a new explanation. According to Su Xingqi, his family's ancestral home in China needed urgent repairs, and his 2 children required 100,000 in cash to cover their school fees. He was not well liked in his local community, so he knew it would be difficult to borrow money from his neighbors. He turned to Xing Fai for help because his business trips to Hong Kong had not generated enough income. Su Xingqi suspected that Su Xingqi was wealthier than he seemed and that he is very stingy. The reason for his low salary during his time working for Xing Fai was that they were exploiting him for low-cost labor. On July 3rd, Su Xingqi traveled to Hong Kong without informing anyone and waited until July 5th, when they had a day off from work. When Xing Fai returned home and found Su Xingqi there, he asked if he needed to cook something, and they men went to the kitchen together. Su Xingqi asked to borrow 1 million Hong Kong dollars, but Xing Fai rejected the request. He explained that he had to use the money for his mother's medical treatment and his daughter's education. However, Su Xingqi didn't believe him and accused Xing Fai of only using him for cost labor. Xing Fai became angry and ordered Su Xingqi to leave. As Xing Fai turned his back, with a concealed knife on, Xingqi attacked him from behind, covering his mouth and stabbing him. Su Xingqi then restrained in Hiu Ying and Hiu Man and began searching the house for cash and bank cards. He demanded to know the password for the bank cards, and Xing Fai intentionally gave him a fake password. Su Xingqi didn't realize this at the time. Su Xingqi claimed that he had killed others by covering their mouths and noses with tape and putting a plastic bag over their head. However, when he went to the nearest ATM to withdraw cash, he discovered that the PIN number he had been given didn't work, and realized that Xing Fai had lied to him. Upon returning home, Su Xingqi discovered that everyone had suffocated to death in his absence. He found the food he and the others had been preparing and decided to eat it next to the 4 corpses while contemplating how to dispose of the bodies. After stealing $6,000 in Hong Kong dollars from Xing Fai's body, Su Xingqi buried the corpses and tools in a small pit, then went to sleep at Xing Fai home. The next morning, Su Xingqi realized that the smell from the bodies might lead to their discovery, so he bought cement and returned to the home. He dug up the pit, poured in the cement, and refilled the hole. Su Xingqi then stayed at the home to answer any calls to Xing Fai's cell phone or house phone, telling callers that he was taking care of things while the Xing Fai family is on vacation. However, Su Xingqi did not expect his ruse to be uncovered so quickly. Even later, he continued to lie about many details, including when he bought the cement and the cause of Yan Yi's death. At this stage, the police didn't think they needed to continue obtaining an accurate confession. In their opinion, they had collected enough evidence to proceed. The trial took place at the Hong Kong High Court on October 28, 2010. Su Xingqi initially pleaded not guilty and altered his previous statement. He claimed that his original story about the affair was true and that Xing Fai was killed in self-defense, while Hiu Man and Hiu Ying were killed accidentally. The defendant stated that he had falsely confessed to extortion and murder brutality, which included physical abuse and suffocation. On November 23, the jury delivered a unanimous guilty verdict for the murders of Xing Fai and Yan Yi. However, the defendant was acquitted of murdering Hiu Ying. Despite this, the defendant received a life sentence for the 3 counts of murder and 1 count of manslaughter. The presiding judge criticized the defendant, describing him as lacking a conscience and being unrepentant. The judge also accused the defendant of fabricating the self-defense story and affair to tarnish the victims' reputations. After Xing Fai's family death, who lived in Hong Kong, surprisingly defended him. They accused Xing Fai of being a hypocrite and the real villain. According to them, Xing Fai was exploiting Su Xingqi for cheap labor and taking his money. However, the neighbors and residents of Ping Chi village were outraged by these claims, forcing Su Xingqi's family to move back to China to avoid the backlash. The crime was considered one of the most shocking in Hong Kong's history. The community showed an outpouring of support for the family Xing Fai's, with many visiting their home to offer condolences. Netizens also raised more than enough money to cover the funeral expenses. Additionally, the family's 9 stray dogs were adopted by another family. Every year on July 5, the adoptive family would take the dogs for a walk in Ping Chi village, near the home of their former owners. On August 9, 2022, 55-years-old Su Xingqi passed away in Hong Kong's Stanley Prison due to liver cancer. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Nadine Lott. Nadine Lott was born in the late 1980s in Arlo, a town on Ireland's southeastern coast. She was the eldest child of Claire and David Lott. She has 3 younger siblings, Phoebe, Tanith, and Kayla. By the summer of 2012, Nadine, 26 years old, had grown into a charismatic woman. She was eagerly planning a trip to Australia, looking forward to a vacation filled with exciting experiences, sports, and new friendships. Nadine stood out from her peers with her bright smile and charming personality, which drew people to her. She had a large social circle and could easily connect with anyone. However, beneath her outgoing exterior, Nadine was a sensitive and vulnerable person who always tried to see the best in others. She cherished her family, who had loved and supported her throughout her childhood. Nadine discovered a passion for photography, capturing life's fleeting moments to preserve the world's beauty. This hobby eventually turned into a career, and she became a successful beautician, helping others enhance their natural beauty. Nadine experienced some difficulties in her personal life. She wasn't eager to settle into a serious relationship, preferring to enjoy her independence and spend time with friends. This desire for freedom led her to take a trip to Australia, where she was attracted by the warm climate, stunning beaches, and exotic landscapes, finding everything fresh and romantic. Nadine met Daniel Murtaugh in Australia, and it was as if they were polar opposites. While Nadine was outgoing and lively, Daniel was quiet and reserved, with piercing eyes and a toned physique that immediately caught her attention. Despite their differences, they felt an instant and inexplicable connection, sharing common interests and a deep sense of intimacy. As they spent more time together, their days were filled with unforgettable experiences and memories. They strolled along stunning beaches, explored the crystal-clear waters, and shared their deepest dreams and secrets. Nadine was captivated by Daniel's surfing skills, and he was drawn to her carefree spirit, genuine nature, and infectious laughter. Their connection grew stronger with each passing day, unencumbered by any barriers or reservations. Daniel, a few years Nadine's senior, hailed from Dayan, a suburb of Dublin, where he worked as a window fitter and lived with his family. Nadine viewed it as a casual fling without any serious commitments. Phoebe was the first to discover Daniel. Shortly after, Claire, the mother, learned about the relationship from her child. Claire quickly suspected that this relationship may not be long-lasting. Nadine's life changed dramatically when she found out she was pregnant with Daniel's baby. A few months later, Daniel attempted to rekindle their relationship and start a family, but it ultimately didn't work out. In November 2013, Nadine gave birth to a baby girl named Kia, but Daniel was noticeably absent during this significant moment. Instead, her sister Phoebe was the one who offered emotional support and remained a constant companion. Phoebe was by Nadine's side during childbirth, took the first photo of mother and daughter, and played a vital role in helping Nadine navigate the challenges of new motherhood. Nadine's pregnancy marked a turning point in her life, as she transitioned into her new role as a mother. Despite the difficulties she faced, Nadine found solace in Phoebe's unwavering support and love. Nadine's story is a poignant reminder of the complexities of love and relationships. Although her relationship with Daniel was unfulfilling and lacked deep emotional connection, Nadine was determined to provide a stable and loving environment for her daughter. But Daniel failed to take responsibility for his actions and showed no interest in being a devoted father, leaving Nadine to raise Kia on her own. Nadine had always tried to provide the best life for her daughter, Kia. In 2016, she wanted to build a home with her loved one, so she rented a house where everyone could live together as a family. However, her hopes were crushed when Daniel, Kia's father, failed to move in with them. This realization marked the end of Nadine's. Daniel's constant absence and broken promises had left her emotionally drained, so she made the decision to end their relationship and start a new chapter in her life. Despite their separation, Nadine had held on to the hope that Kia would still be able to maintain a relationship with her father. Claire, Nadine's mother, had a more realistic view of Daniel's. His love for boxing was a higher priority for him than his family. In contrast, Nadine remained devoted to her daughter Kia, providing her with the love, care, and support she required. As Kia grew up without her father, she had her mother as a role model, teaching her to persevere through challenges. In October 2019, Claire suggested that Nadine celebrate her birthday in Rome. During the trip, Nadine's daughter, Kia, also referred to as Nine, confided in her mother about the struggles she was facing in her life. Nadine had moved on from her relationship with Daniel and was thriving as a single mother. She enjoyed her job, took pride in her accomplishments, and was happy with her life. Her future looked promising, especially after being offered a modeling job. Her happiness was short-lived when she discovered that Daniel continued to make unfulfilled promises to visit their daughter Kia in Ireland. When Daniel requested a meeting to give Nadine money for Kia, she was skeptical, suspecting that he just wanted to see her, not their daughter. She agreed to his request, but only because she didn't want Kia to think poorly of him. Nadine still held on to the hope of creating a real family, despite the increasing impossibility of it. To shield Kia from disappointment and pain, Nadine made excuses for her father's absence. She wanted to protect her daughter from Daniel's irresponsibility and neglect. Meanwhile, Daniel was reluctant to let Nadine go and was fearful that she might start dating other men. As a result, Nadine felt forced to keep her personal life hidden from him to avoid his controlling behavior and threats. In 2019, Nadine Lott's life drastically changed after she ended her relationship with her partner, Daniel. She started dating a new partner from Turkey, but her attempts to keep this relationship private were unsuccessful. Daniel discovered Nadine's new partner and became furious, sparking a series of stalking incidents that caused her immense distress. On December 5th, Nadine sent a clear message to Daniel, stating that their relationship was over and demanding that he stop harassing her. She believed this would finally bring an end to the toxic relationship. However, on December 13th, Nadine asked Daniel to watch their child, Kia, while she attended her aunt's birthday celebration at a local pub. Daniel agreed to watch Kia at his home in Condon, a different location from where Nadine lived, which was in Wicklow. On the night of December 14th, Daniel repeatedly tried to contact Nadine, calling her at 5:57 and 1:26 a.m., but she didn't answer. He eventually sent her a message, asking her to return home soon. Nadine returned home and changed her clothes, but the events that followed are unclear. What is known is that Daniel attacked Nadine, terrifying her 6-year-old daughter, Kia. The noise and screams caught the attention of a neighbor, Ela Klanovich, who investigated the source of the commotion. Ela saw Nadine lying on the floor in her hallway with Daniel standing over her, his face contorted with rage and panic. Horrified, Ela retreated to her apartment and quickly contacted Nadine's family. When Claire, mother of Nadine's, heard Ela's story, she felt overwhelmed with fear and anxiety. Daniel fled the scene in his Volvo, leaving behind a trail of dust and blood. When Claire rushed into Nadine's apartment, she was met with a disturbing sight. The walls and broken glass were covered in blood splatters, reflecting the horrific events that had unfolded. But the situation was far from over. It was now 9:50 a.m. Claire, Phoebe, and Kyle walked into the kitchen and were shocked by what they saw. Nadine's body was lying on the floor, brutally mutilated and showing no signs of life. Meanwhile, about 20 miles away in the town of Lar, Daniel lost control of his car and crashed into a ditch. Miraculously, he escaped with only minor scratches. John Becken stumbled upon the wreckage and was shocked by the scene: a car with broken headlights, shattered glass, and a lone vehicle lying in a ditch. His initial thought was that the driver had been drinking after a Christmas party, but as he approached the car, he was surprised to find it empty. Suddenly, Daniel emerged from the fog, his eyes vacant, his body shaking, and his clothes covered in blood. Daniel confessed to the crime in a despairing tone to a witness. He was then taken to the hospital in an ambulance, repeatedly muttering that he loved Nadine, as if seeking forgiveness. Meanwhile, Nadine's apartment was in disarray. When paramedics and police officers arrived, they were met with a strong smell of blood. The walls and furniture were smeared with it, and the scene was chaotic. Paramedic Ian Clark was struck by the extent of the destruction. Broken dishes, shattered glass, and bloody footprints indicated that a violent crime had occurred. Phoebe and Kyle rushed Nadine to urgent care after a severe accident, where medical professionals were able to save her life despite her critical injuries, which had left her unconscious. Nadine was rushed to St. Vincent's Hospital, where she was admitted to the intensive care unit. Doctors documented severe injuries to her head, neck, and chest at 10:58 a.m. Her condition was critical, with 64 injuries found on her body, the cause of which was unclear. Nadine received multiple blood transfusions, but her condition remained critical. Claire hoped that Nadine would recover. Claire stayed by her daughter Nadine's side in the hospital, bringing comfort with familiar items from home like family photos, Nadine's favorite perfumes, and cherished toys. Despite the doctor's bleak outlook, Claire was resolute in her support, believing that her love and care would help Nadine navigate the challenging road to recovery. Meanwhile, Daniel was scheduled to appear in court on December 16th. The court decided to hold him in custody until his trial. On the same day, Claire accompanied Nadine to a follow-up examination to assess the damage to her brain. Claire prayed that Nadine would find the strength to pull through. Tragically, Nadine's injuries were too severe, and she passed away on December 17th, between 3 o'clock and 4 p.m., without ever regaining consciousness. Irish Police Colonel Dean McCarthy described the violent crime as one of the most brutal he had ever witnessed. After the murder, Chief State Pathologist Dr. Linda Mogan performed the autopsy at the city funeral home on December 18th. Following the autopsy, the victim's loved ones, particularly her family, were left with many unanswered questions. Claire was consumed by her thoughts, trying to make sense of the events that had transpired. The next day, the killer, Daniel, confessed to the heinous crime, describing how he attacked and brutally murdered Nadine. According to Daniel's account, he started by grabbing Nadine, hitting her on the head, and then repeatedly punching her with his fists. Despite her efforts to resist, Daniel continued the assault, kicking her and eventually stabbing and strangling her with a charger cord. Kia, a witness to the horrific attack, pleaded with her father to stop the assault, but her cries were ignored. Despite Nadine's desperate attempts to fight back, Daniel had remarkable physical strength and was impossible to defeat. A funeral service for Nadine was held on December 22nd at St. Mary and Peter's Church in Arlo, her hometown. The ceremony drew over 1,000 mourners, and hundreds more watched the live broadcast as they gathered to bid their final farewells. 6 people carefully carried the coffin containing Nadine, a young and beautiful girl, as if she were asleep in eternal rest. The altar was surrounded by scarlet velvet roses. Nadine's mother, Claire, sat in the front row, struggling to hold back tears as she gazed at her daughter's coffin. Her eyes shone with love and admiration for she who lay before her. Family and friends gathered nearby, overcome with grief, as they clutched handkerchiefs to their faces and openly wept. David Lott, Nadine's father, stepped forward, his voice shaking with sorrow, and tearfully placed one of Nadine's elegant handbags beside the coffin. Nadine had a remarkable ability to turn anything into a stunning fashion accessory that perfectly matched her one-of-a-kind style. Next, Kyle, a close family friend, approached the altar, holding a photograph of Nadine and Kia, beaming with happiness as they hugged each other. Kia, confused and grief-stricken, clung to her mother's side, unable to comprehend the loss she had suffered. Phoebe, Nadine's sister, brought a pair of shoes to the altar, the very ones Nadine had been planning to wear to her prom. Overwhelmed with emotion, Phoebe struggled to hold back her tears. Tanith, another close friend, carefully placed a photo album on the altar, filled with cherished memories of Nadine's carefree days, joyful parties, and radiant smile. These memories would remain with them forever, a poignant reminder of the happy times they had shared with Nadine. With genuine empathy on his face, Priest Michael Moore led the ceremony with heartfelt words of eternal life and hope that soothed the grieving family and friends. Looking directly at Kia, he voiced gratitude for the immense joy she had brought Nadine during her life, wishing that Kia's own life ahead be one rich with care, protection, and enduring love. He reassured Kia that her mother's loved ones would always be there to protect her from harm, serving as her guardian angels. Nadine's sisters, Phoebe and Tanith, tearfully bid their final farewell, overcome with grief at the loss of their beloved sister. The ceremony concluded with the playing of funeral music, after which Nadine's coffin was laid to rest in the San Gabriel Cemetery. As her loved ones said their final goodbyes, they took comfort in knowing that Nadine's soul was at peace. Hello friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Antonia Barra. Antonia was born in the late 1980s to a loving family that valued closeness and togetherness. Her parents, Alejandro and Marcela, raised 5 children in a spacious home, providing a nurturing environment where care and attention were abundant. The children were well-behaved and kind, and the household was generally free of significant problems. Antonia, however, stood out from her siblings due to her exceptional qualities from a young age. She was remarkably perceptive, responsible, and ambitious, which made her a source of great pride for her parents. She consistently excelled academically, had positive relationships with her teachers, and had clear plans for her future. Antonia's aspirations included traveling and living a fulfilling life. After high school, Antonia successfully enrolled in her preferred university and began pursuing a highly competitive major. As a freshman, she dedicated herself to mastering the fundamentals of her chosen profession and actively participated in both academic and social activities, forming close bonds with like-minded friends who shared her interests and ambitions. Antonia had become particularly close to Consuelo Uribe, a law student. They friends enjoyed spending time together, going shopping, attending parties, and socializing. Their friendship deepened over time. When Antonia's boyfriend Rodrigo broke up with her, Consuelo suggested a distraction to help her cope with the heartbreak. Antonia, struggling to come to terms with the breakup, welcomed her friend's idea. To take her mind off the past and briefly escape her sadness, Antonia and Consuelo planned a trip to Pucón, a tourist town in Chile, to celebrate the country's Independence Day on September 18th. The music festival was scheduled to take place at the Black Room Club on the evening of September 17th. At around 6:30 p.m., Antonia, Consuelo, and 3 other friends, including Consuelo's boyfriend, set off for Pucón. The trip was smooth, and upon arrival, the group stayed in separate accommodations, with they staying in a summer house owned by the Uribe family. After 8 p.m., they got ready to head to a party at Black Room, a well-known spot that promised an unforgettable night. Before leaving, Antonia texted her dad, who reminded her to be careful around people she didn't know. Antonia assured him that being cautious was second nature to her. They had a great time chatting and dancing with friends. As fate would have it, Martin and Antonia unexpectedly ran into each other at the club. They were thrilled to see each other and spent the evening together, chatting and dancing. Throughout the night, Antonia would occasionally leave Martin's side to check in with her friend and greet other male acquaintances she had met while bar hopping. However, she didn't realize how much she had been drinking, likely due to the long drive and her empty stomach. This was unusual for her, as she normally didn't let herself get carried away with alcohol. Consuelo told Antonia it was time to leave the club, but Antonia was having too much fun and refused to go. Consuelo warned her to stop drinking and think about leaving, but Antonia was determined to stay. Despite Consuelo's concerns, Antonia chose to stay at the club, and Consuelo left without her. However, Antonia would soon come to regret her decision. One of their friends stayed at the club and saw what happened next. He later shared what he saw during the investigation and in court. He said that Martin started talking to Antonia and then took her hand, leading her towards the exit. Antonia seemed unsure and confused, likely because she had been drinking too much. Although she was in a daze, Antonia didn't seem to resist or mind being led away. It was unclear if she even knew what was happening. But external surveillance footage told a different story. According to Martin's friends, they left the club in 2 cars, but there was no room for her, so she ended up walking with them. Along the way, they passed a store, and footage showed that the man had forced her to enter. She was visibly intoxicated and unable to resist. Throughout the night, Martin, who was somewhat more sober than the others, attempted to exert control over the situation. The footage captured moments of Martin being overly affectionate towards her and trying to kiss her, despite her clear reluctance and attempts to pull away. After arriving upstairs around 9 a.m., Consuelo checked her messages and found a voice message from her friend Antonia. Initially, Consuelo had trouble making out what Antonia was saying, but after listening more closely, she caught a few words. Antonia was asking to be picked up, but Consuelo didn't know exactly where she was. To find her, Consuelo used her GPS and, accompanied by her boyfriend Jose, headed to the location indicated. Upon entering the house, Consuelo and Jose were shocked to find Martin standing naked, attempting to cover himself with a pillow. When Consuelo asked about her friend Antonia, Martin claimed he didn't know where she was. However, they soon found Antonia upstairs in one of the rooms, lying on a bed in her underwear, crying quietly. Jose carried her to the car, and Consuelo asked what had happened, but Antonia was too distraught to explain. At the summer house, Consuelo and Jose tried to comfort Antonia, holding her and talking to her. Eventually, Antonia opened up about what had happened. She confessed that Martin had taken advantage of her against her will, leaving her feeling powerless. After learning about the incident, Jose and Consuelo urged Antonia to report the attacker to the police and pursue justice. However, Antonia declined, fearing that her parents and the public would find out and judge her. Instead, she chose to silently cope with the trauma and try to heal on her own, asking Jose and Consuelo to keep the incident private. During a conversation with her father, Antonia tried to respond normally to his light-hearted question about whether she had been drinking too much. However, her response unintentionally revealed her distress. The next day, Antonia met with Martin to discuss the incident, but he was uncooperative and arrogant. Martin claimed that the events of the previous night were consensual, which made Antonia realize that she would not receive the truth or an apology from him. She understood that she needed to try to move forward. Antonia stayed quiet and acted normal for 3 weeks. A close childhood friend claimed not to notice anything unusual, but Antonia's classmates observed that her memory was faltering and her thoughts were disorganized. But some time later, Alejandro eventually discovered the truth about his daughter. Alejandro shared his daughter Antonia's heartbreaking story, which sparked a nationwide movement. Multiple women came forward with similar allegations against Martin, leading to 6 new charges and his exposure as a serial offender. The Martin family sought court protection for their personal information, which had been leaked online. They claimed that the online harassment, including insults, threatening messages, and false information, had violated their constitutional right to privacy. The court agreed, and on June 12, 2020, it ordered Antonia's relatives to stop sharing information about the Martin family on social media and to refrain from publishing anything that could compromise them. However, this decision sparked widespread outrage in Chile. Many people felt that the court was protecting the suspect rather than the victims. On July 21, the Antonia family appealed the decision to the Supreme Court, but their appeal was rejected. The suspect's lawyer then requested protective measures on his client's behalf, but the suspect was eventually charged with multiple counts of attack. The case, known as the Antonia case, became a rallying cry for victims of violence in Chile. For many women, it marked a turning point, and they began to come forward to share their own experiences after years of silence. On July 22, a surprising turn of events occurred when the court changed Martin's preventive measure from detention to house arrest, effectively releasing him. The judge clarified that this decision did not imply a reduced sentence. Meanwhile, the prosecutor had charged Martin with 5 counts of misconduct, but the court only recognized 2. This sparked widespread outrage, with thousands of people taking to the streets to protest the halt in investigations and the decision to place Martin under house arrest. In response to public pressure, the authorities appealed the decision, and the judiciary quickly overturned the house arrest order, taking Martin back into custody. Antonia stressed the importance of taking action against Martin, as his behavior made women vulnerable. In February 2021, investigators found Martin's phone, which contained a disturbing collection of photos of women's underwear, suggesting a trophy collection. The 400-page police report included statements from multiple victims, witnesses, and people close to Martin and Antonia. A childhood teacher described Martin as a smart and cheerful child, but noted that he had an unusual interest in intimate topics. Some women recalled that Martin had inappropriately touched them when they were children, but at the time, no one thought much of it. On June 14, 2022, the criminal court in Tomoko began its hearings, which were expected to last over a month. During this time, the prosecution presented evidence, expert testimonies, and witness statements. The court started watching a CCTV. Video footage revealed that Antonia was unable to control the situation. On August 26, Martin was sentenced to 20 years in prison for crimes against intimacy and intimacy-related aggression. However, on December 29, the Supreme Court accepted the defense's appeal, disagreeing with the verdict. A new trial was scheduled for spring 2023. In a related development, Martin's original lawyers resigned on March 16, and the public defense took over his case. The second trial began on April 24, 2024, focusing on 5 counts of violence and 2 counts of forced intimacy. During the trial, Martin waived his right to remain silent and provided his account of the events. He claimed that his actions were the result of severe intoxication. However, the prosecutor countered that by drinking with the victims, he had taken advantage of their vulnerability. Ultimately, Martin was found guilty on July 7, 2023. The federal prosecution sought a prison sentence of 41 years, but on July 28, 2023, Martin only was sentenced to 17 years in prison for committing 7 intimacy-related crimes against 6 victims. Since he had already spent time in custody, he would serve 14 years. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Nicole Peets. Nicole Peets was born on February 26, 1973, in King County, Washington. Her parents, who later divorced while Nicole was still in school, had her as their only child together. During her high school years, Nicole was a lively and sociable individual who participated in sports and had a charming personality. She had many friends and enjoyed trips to the countryside, with Lake Sammamish, located east of Seattle, being her favorite vacation spot. She spent her summer vacations there every year. After high school, Nicole attended Western Washington College, where she studied public relations. Alongside her studies, she continued to engage in sports and maintained an excellent physical shape. She decided to turn her passion for sports into a career and landed a job as a trainer at a local sports club. There, she quickly earned the respect of her colleagues and gained a loyal client base who regularly attended her group classes. At the same time, Nicole pursued higher education in management and eventually secured a job at a major mobile communications company. Outwardly, Nicole appeared to be a friendly and sociable person who was always willing to help others. However, few people realized that she was hiding a great deal of pain and misery behind this facade. As a teenager, Nicole struggled with addiction after her parents got divorced. This event was traumatic for her fragile and still developing psyche, leading her to rebel and seek solace in bad company and alcohol. Unfortunately, this led to a severe addiction that lasted for several years and had a devastating impact on Nicole's physical and mental health. Her mother, Gail, was often away from home due to her demanding job as a flight attendant and didn't notice the warning signs. Nicole lived with her elderly grandmother, who also didn't initially realize that her granddaughter was regularly consuming alcohol. By the time the truth came to light, the damage had already been done. Fortunately, Nicole's mother was there to support her. Gail not only arranged for Nicole to receive therapy but also attended AA meetings with her, helping her to open up and overcome her addiction. By that time, Gail had remarried, and her new partner, Rod, was very supportive of Nicole. He treated her like his own daughter and believed she could overcome her addiction. Nicole took therapy seriously, attending every session, and soon overcame her addiction. However, the effects of alcohol on her health were significant. Nicole developed severe pancreas problems, requiring surgery. More devastatingly, her early alcohol abuse damaged her reproductive system, rendering her unable to have children. After overcoming her addiction in the mid-1990s, Nicole met her future husband, David, at her new job at a sports club. David, a regular at the club, was a tall, handsome young man who was diligent about his fitness routine. He was immediately drawn to Nicole, and she, too, noticed the attractive young man and became interested. Although David was 4 years younger than Nicole, the age difference did not bother them. The relationship between Nicole and David gradually developed into a romantic one, which lasted almost 8 years before they got married in 2002. Their intimate wedding ceremony in Hawaii was attended only by their closest friends and family. After exchanging their vows, they moved to a quiet town called Linwood in Washington State, where they bought a home and began their new life together. Nicole was known for being sociable, friendly, and had a talent for building relationships. She quickly formed close bonds with the neighbors and had a passion for animals, with multiple dogs being part of the family. Because unable to have children of her own, she directed her maternal instincts towards her pets. David and Nicole were viewed as the epitome of a happy married couple, with a seemingly perfect relationship that brought them joy. One of Nicole's many hobbies was cooking, and she excelled at it. She delighted her husband and impressed guests with her culinary skills, taking pleasure in sharing meals and company with those she loved. Tragedy struck when Nicole disappeared on the eve of her 33rd birthday in 2006. Nicole failed to report to work and was unreachable by her family throughout the day. Her mother, Gail, tried to contact her but was unsuccessful, prompting her to alert David, Nicole's husband, to see if he knew what was going on. However, David had also been unable to reach Nicole. When questioned, David revealed that he and Nicole had argued the previous day, and when she didn't answer her phone the next day, he assumed she was still upset. He waited until evening to attempt to apologize, only to realize Nicole was still missing. It wasn't until the evening of the second day, when Nicole still hadn't contacted her family and her phone was still unreachable, that the police decided to launch a search. They began by investigating the last known location where Nicole was seen, her home with David. An investigation of the room where Nicole Peets was last seen found no signs of evidence of kidnapping. The absence of her personal car suggested that she might have simply left on her own. The family turned to social media to spread the word and ask for help in finding their daughter. They also immediately flew to Linwood, where they started their own search efforts. They put up posters with her picture and spoke to people who knew her, hoping someone might have information about her whereabouts. The police searched for Nicole and her car, trying to determine the route she took on the day she disappeared. Tragically, the worst fears were confirmed a few days later when a jogger discovered a young woman's body in a local park area. The jogger had taken an unusual route that morning. It was there that he stumbled upon something suspicious in the shrubbery, which turned out to be a brutally mutilated, naked body. The police were immediately notified, and forensic experts suggested that the crime was violent due to the presence of severe blunt force trauma and the lack of clothing. The autopsy revealed extensive bruising, abrasions, and blunt force injuries, indicating that the victim had been severely beaten before her death. The cause of death was asphyxiation by strangulation, and it appeared that the killer had used their bare hands. Police initially believed the body they found was that of Nicole Peets, a young woman who had gone missing several days earlier and had been the subject of a citywide search. Her identity was confirmed by her family as Nicole. When Nicole's mother, Gail, saw her daughter's body at the morgue, she was overcome with grief and needed medical attention. Her husband, Rod, was also devastated, but his reaction seemed a bit unusual to some. He didn't seem truly distraught and his emotions seemed forced. However, at that time no one paid much attention to this, because everyone coped with the tragedy in their own way. Police believe the missing car was the primary target of the attack and would hold key evidence. They released a description of the gray Volkswagen Polo to the media, asking for tips. Weeks later, a security guard found the car in a parking lot on the outskirts of the city, noticing it had been parked there for an extended period. The police took the car for a thorough examination, hoping to find evidence and clues that would lead them to the perpetrator and help reconstruct the crime scene. However, their search yielded nothing. The only fingerprints and DNA found in the car belonged to Nicole and her husband, who occasionally drove the vehicle. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the investigators were reluctant to return the car to David. In addition, the victim's lack of clothes raised questions. The numerous injuries suggested a rage-driven attack, possibly a personal vendetta. However, Nicole was known for her kind nature and had no known enemies. The investigation into this complex case was on the verge of going cold, with no new leads or directions to pursue after nearly a year. The lack of witnesses and surveillance cameras in the parking lot where the car was abandoned made it difficult to gather evidence. However, one peculiar detail stood out. The driver's seat was positioned in a way that suggested the person driving the car was significantly taller and larger than the victim. The police obtained footage from the gas station security cameras, but the contents remained unclear. Frustrated by the lack of progress and the fact that the killer was still at large, Nicole's parents took matters into their own hands. They hired a private investigator to gather information and verify their suspicions, and offered a $10,000 reward to anyone who could provide useful information about the case. David, the husband of the victim, initially showed interest in the investigation, but his enthusiasm waned after 6 months. He eventually remarried, having a child with his new wife. This news was devastating for Gail, the victim's mother, as her daughter had been unable to have children, and David had often criticized her for this. Gail repeatedly suggested that David might be the culprit, but many people believed Gail was motivated by resentment. The police seemed to dismiss this theory altogether. However, 6 years after the crime, David was taken into custody as the prime suspect. One unusual circumstance was a gas station security footage that captured a man using Nicole, credit card. The footage appeared to show a man resembling David, but he wore a head covering and dark glasses, making a positive identification impossible. Although this recording was not definitive proof, it was still added to the case file. Another discrepancy was the missing wedding ring, which Nicole never removed from her finger. Initially, investigators believed the killer might have taken it, but they found the ring in a box on the dressing table in Nicole's home. During the examination of Nicole's body, experts found a dental mouth guard in her mouth. This device was specifically designed to prevent teeth grinding, a condition known as bruxism, which Nicole experienced during sleep. The mouth guard had been prescribed to her shortly before her death due to her nervousness, which caused involuntary muscle spasms in her jaw. These spasms had led to the erosion of her tooth enamel and chipping of her teeth. The investigation concluded that Nicole was likely killed in her own bed while she was still asleep. This theory was supported by the fact that she was not wearing any clothes and her body was clean, with no signs of a struggle. Additionally, Nicole's face was free of makeup. The mouth guard found at the scene was not a significant factor, as Nicole had only recently started using it. Moreover, forensic experts analyzed the driver's seat in the car and found that the last person to sit behind the wheel had the same physical characteristics as David, Nicole's husband. The car only had fingerprints belonging to David and Nicole, suggesting that no one else had been in the vehicle. A crucial discovery was made possible by advances in technology. The killer had attempted to mislead the investigation by using Nicole's phone in various parts of the city. However, at the same locations and times, David's phone was also active, revealing a suspicious coincidence. Furthermore, it was discovered that David had a motive for the crime, and the seemingly perfect family was actually facing a severe crisis. Nicole was juggling multiple responsibilities, studying, working 2 jobs, and supporting others struggling with addiction. Meanwhile, her husband led a carefree life, unable to hold down a job and spending most of his time in bars and clubs. He would often use Nicole's earnings to fund his nightlife, including affairs with other women. Nicole tried to intervene in her husband's addiction, suggesting AA meetings, but he dismissed her concerns. The situation worsened as David's infidelity was revealed. After Nicole's sudden and mysterious death, David hastily filed for a large insurance payout and began a new relationship. It was later discovered that David had been having an affair with a woman named Jane for several months prior to Nicole's death. While Nicole was working or studying, David would often meet Jane at bars and clubs. Just before Nicole's birthday, David brought Jane to their home, where Nicole unexpectedly walked in on them. This led to a heated argument between Nicole and David. Nicole confided in her mother about the incident just days before she mysteriously vanished. Gail had her suspicions about her son-in-law from the start, but the police claimed they didn't have enough evidence to arrest him. As a result, the case was closed, and the family was left in the dark about the investigation. Over time, they lost hope that the person responsible would be held accountable. After his wife's death, David received a significant insurance payout, which he spent on lavish gifts for his mistress, Jane. Gail believed that Jane might have been involved in the crime, but she was only questioned as a witness due to lack of evidence. In 2013, David went to court, still denying any involvement in his wife's death. His lawyers initially argued that the evidence against him was circumstantial and not conclusive. However, as the prosecution presented more incriminating evidence, the defense shifted their strategy. They portrayed David as a victim, suggesting that his wife, Nicole, had become unbearable to live with due to her addiction to pain pills and drinking. The claims that Nicole was unstable were unfounded and disputed by everyone who knew her. Even if she had lost control, that would not have justified David's brutal murder of his wife. Ultimately, David's guilt was proven beyond a doubt, and he received the maximum sentence allowed by state law. David was sentenced to 18 years in prison, but he will be eligible for parole in 2025 after serving 2/3 of his sentence. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Tina Watson. Tina Watson was born in West Germany on February 13, 1977. She was adopted by Tommy and Cindy Thomas on January 24, 1980. Tina met her future husband, Gabe Watson, while attending the University of Alabama in Birmingham, and they started dating in January 2001. Tina was diagnosed with a heart condition called paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, PSVT. Despite this, she took diving lessons in January 2003 and earned her certification before marrying Gabe on October 11, 2003. At the time of their wedding, Gabe was a qualified rescue diver with 55 dives under his belt, while Tina had only dived 5 times. As Tina and Gabe's wedding day approached, Tina's anxiety grew. At 26 years old, she had already experienced 2 failed relationships and was now attempting marriage for the second time. Her first relationship with Scott McCulloch ended due to her mother's disapproval. Although her mother didn't have specific reasons, she wanted a better life for Tina and felt she was rushing into marriage. Tina and Scott eventually parted ways. Her second relationship with Stan Marks also failed, but this time, her parents weren't involved. They simply couldn't overcome their differences and mutually decided to end the relationship. It wasn't until Christmas Eve, at a party with friends, that Tina met Gabe Watson. Their relationship wasn't sparked by love at first sight but rather by mutual support after recent breakups. 2 years into their relationship, Gabe proposed to Tina. Having learned from past experiences, Tina agreed, but only if she had her parents' blessing. In 2003, Gabe decided to ask Tina's parents for their blessing in a romantic gesture, choosing Valentine's Day. However, since Tina's father was away, the dinner was rescheduled for February 15th. During the dinner, Gabe announced his decision to spend the rest of his life with Tina. Tina's father, Tommy, responded with a straightforward question, "Do you love Tina?" However, instead of answering, Watson stuttered and remained silent. His father dismissed this reaction as mere awkwardness. Tommy then posed the same question to Tina, but she also avoided a direct answer. Instead, she expressed her fear of being alone at 26 years old. After considering their responses, Tommy gave his blessing to the young couple. The wedding preparations were well underway, with Tina preoccupied with her attire, guest list, and other details. Meanwhile, Watson was solely focused on planning their honeymoon. He had already decided on a trip to the Great Barrier Reef in the Pacific Ocean near Australia, where he intended to go diving. There isn't any consulting Tina about her preferences. To explore the sunken ship, Townsville Titanic, which sank in 1911, Gabe wanted Tina to learn scuba diving. However, Tina wasn't interested in diving, unlike Gabe, who was an experienced scuba diver with 55 dives under his belt. He had even completed a rescue diving course. Gabe would occasionally take Tina scuba diving in a pool with calm water and lifeguard supervision, but that was the extent of her experience. Gabe gave Tina an ultimatum: if she didn't learn to dive by their honeymoon, she would have to stay home while he went on his adventures. Gabe took out a loan to buy Tina her own diving equipment and pay for her lessons. However, Tina's first instructor was unimpressed with her skills and warned Gabe that she wasn't suited for open ocean diving. Gabe was furious and refused to listen, accusing the instructor of being a poor teacher and discontinuing the classes. The second instructor promptly gave Tina a passing grade, but also made a comment that she only made an effort to impress her future husband. Tina and Gabe got married on October 11th, and 2 days later, they embarked on a trip to Australia, which was funded by their wedding gifts totaling $10,000. During their honeymoon, Gabe dedicated some time to making Tina happy. They explored Sydney, visited the Sydney Aquarium, and went to the zoo. Although Tina was initially excited, her mood changed as they approached their visit to the Great Barrier Reef. On October 21st, they traveled to Townsville and boarded a boat in the evening, heading to a renowned destination popular among divers. However, employees at the diving company later reported that Tina and Gabe appeared inexperienced with diving equipment. Despite Gabe having completed diving courses and having some experience, he seemed uncertain about the equipment, handling it as if it were his first time. Before diving, Gabe assisted Tina in passing the required exam, which typically should be conducted individually. When the instructor offered Tina assistance underwater, she declined. The dive log noted a strong current that day, a crucial detail in the events that unfolded. As they prepared for the dive, Gabe helped Tina with the equipment they had purchased in the US. He rented an 11-liter tank for himself but chose an 8.5-liter tank for Tina, a volume considered small and potentially hazardous given her limited experience. Initially, the dive to the Townsville Titanic wreck was not possible. Tina needed an additional air tank, which stopped her from reaching the required depth. Furthermore, Gabe's underwater computer was not working. The computer calculates the needed diving and ascent speeds and shows the oxygen levels in the cylinders. After returning to the boat and resolving the computer issue, they attempted the dive again. The wreck was located 49 feet below the surface, and Tina was the first to descend, with Gabe following closely behind. According to Gabe's account, everything seemed normal at first. However, at some point, Tina stopped, began waving at him, and then signaled that she wanted to ascend. Gabe immediately recognized that she was panicking, which was not an uncommon occurrence for her. As they were already halfway to the surface, Gabe decided to calm Tina down and maintain their current depth for a while, rather than continuing the dive, allowing her to psychologically adjust to the pressure. Gabe said that Tina had been breathing deeply, which had not been safe, and Gabe had seen that Tina was starting to sink. Gabe had attempted to grab her belt to keep her afloat, but Tina had swung her arm forcefully, knocking his mask off. As Gabe had quickly put his mask back on, Tina had drifted further away. Gabe had tried swimming towards her but had been unable to reach her. Gabe had then made the decision to return to the surface to seek help from the lifeguards. During his ascent, Gabe had met two other swimmers, but despite his attempts to signal for help, the swimmer had ignored him. It's worth noting that there were two Asian men in the vicinity, but neither corroborated Gabe's account of seeking help. Subsequent police analysis of underwater computer readings revealed that Gabe had indeed attempted to swim after his wife for a short while before giving up. However, his ascent to the surface was controlled, as he stopped at each designated depth level as instructed. Other divers at the scene claimed that Gabe had sufficient opportunity to rescue his wife, but failed to act. The incident occurred early in the dive, and Gabe had enough oxygen to swim to the bottom and back to the surface. Rescuers on the ship responded quickly, locating Tina's body at a depth of 82 feet. Despite their efforts, including 40 minutes of artificial respiration on the deck, Tina was pronounced dead. Witnesses reported that Gabe kept his distance from his wife's body, appearing indifferent to the situation, and even exhibiting carefree behavior such as smiling with other passengers on the way to shore, which he later denied in court. The autopsy results for Tina revealed some inconsistencies. Although there were no obvious signs of a violent death, there were bruises on her neck and blood in her nostrils. However, these findings are not unusual given the 82-foot depth at which her body was discovered. Toxicology tests showed no alcohol in her system, but high levels of ibuprofen and paracetamol, which are commonly used to treat seasickness. A small amount of fluid was found in her lungs. The official cause of death was listed as drowning, but it is possible that she was already oxygen deprived before succumbing to drowning. Tina's diving gear was inspected by the Australian Water Police, but no issues were found. Initially, the police could have dismissed the incident as an accident caused by an inexperienced diver neglecting safety protocols, a sadly common occurrence. However, there were some suspicious aspects to the case, such as the inconclusive autopsy results. Additionally, Watson's unusual behavior, as reported by the diving team, didn't align with the expected actions of a grieving husband. These inconsistencies made it difficult to close the case, leading to a prolonged investigation. Gabe began to suspect that the detectives were investigating him. Furthermore, Tina's parents refused to accept the incident as a tragic accident and sought to hold their son-in-law accountable either for their daughter's death or for failing to assist her. The police observed that the suspect, Gabe, was in a state of shock. He displayed erratic behavior, crying and laughing uncontrollably, and twitching nervously. Gabe requested to call his father and complained of ear pain. He also begged his father to inform his wife's parents about the tragic event. Later that night, Gabe was released from police custody. He proceeded to the yacht owned by the company that had organized the diving trip to the reef. Gabe asked the company for a place to stay for the night, citing that the trip was initially supposed to last 2 days but was cut short due to his wife's death. He also requested a partial refund for the dive, as he never got to see the sunken ship. On October 24th, Gabe's mother arrived in Townsville to support her son and help him find a lawyer. At Gabe's request, they visited the morgue, where he wanted to see his wife one last time. Although Gabe was still considered a suspect, his actions were those of a grieving husband. He cried, held his wife's hand, and begged for her forgiveness, unaware that a police officer was standing outside, recording his actions on a tape recorder. Detective Lawrence questioned Gabe in court about his earlier statement next to Tina at the morgue, "I didn't mean to hurt you." Lawrence sought clarification on what Gabe meant by it. Gabe had been traveling home with his wife's body and had a layover in Oakland. During this time, he sought medical attention for a sore ear and was held for evaluation at the airport. The investigation suggested that Gabe did this to avoid meeting Tina's father. However, it was revealed that ear problems are common among divers, which may have explained Gabe's condition. At Tina's funeral on November 5th, Gabe met with his father-in-law, Watson. In a visible gesture, Gabe removed his wife's wedding ring and placed it on his finger, covering his own ring. He also removed her earrings and handed them to Watson. After this encounter, the Thomas family did not interact with Gabe again that day. Later in the trial, Gabe was questioned about removing his wife's jewelry during her funeral. He simply smiled and shrugged, seemingly unwilling to confirm or deny it. Those who knew Gabe had mixed opinions about his character. Some found him to be kind and amusing, while others considered him cruel and controlling. However, they all agreed that Gabe and his wife, Tina, appeared unhappy together. Tina's friends corroborated what she had shared with her father at a family dinner on February 15th, that she had married Gabe out of fear of being alone and that this decision ultimately led to her demise. Furthermore, one of Tina's friends revealed that Tina had confided in her about being taken to an insurance company by Gabe, where she was forced to purchase a life insurance policy at an inflated rate, naming Gabe as the beneficiary. This account was verified by the insurance agent, who confirmed the details. The cab driver who drove Gabe and Tina to their yacht also testified that Tina had cried throughout the ride, while Gabe ignored her. Another friend of Tina's, Amanda Phillips, came forward with a disturbing story that shed more light on the true nature of Gabe and Tina's relationship. It was revealed that Gabe had secretly recorded Tina using the bathroom, edited the footage, and incorporated it into a Christmas celebration video. That would have been acceptable, but he chose to do it in front of a full house of guests during a general viewing. As everyone tried to explain to him that his actions were in poor taste, he laughed loudly while they gestured in frustration, tapping their fingers against their temples. Although removing jewelry during a funeral may seem like a shocking and condemnatory act by Gabe, a more disturbing incident occurred in 2008. During the trial, the jury was shown footage of Watson visiting Tina's grave, taking all the flowers, and carrying them away. The flowers were later found in a nearby trash can. Tina's father had noticed the missing flowers and set up a hidden camera among the monuments to catch the thief. However, he was shocked to see Gabe on the tape and was outraged by his actions. In court, Gabe claimed that he and his wife had discussed their own death on an extreme honeymoon and that she had requested no flowers on her grave. This excuse sounded strange and unlikely. Gabe claimed that Tina drowned while he attempted to put a mask on her face underwater. However, it was later revealed that this was impossible without an additional air source, which in this case was Tina's oxygen supply. In November 2008, Australian authorities arrested Gabe. His trial began on June 5, 2009, where he pleaded guilty to failing to save his wife. As a result, he was charged with negligent homicide and sentenced to 18 months in prison. Upon completing his sentence, Gabe returned to the U.S. However, a year later, he was charged with first-degree murder by a U.S. court. The prosecution alleged that his motive was to collect insurance payouts following his wife's death. Gabe's lawyer defended him by shifting the blame onto the diving company, claiming that its employees had failed to ensure tourist safety and were now afraid of losing their business due to potential license revocation. Regarding the insurance payout, Gabe received $33,000. However, he spent significantly more on lawyers and additional expert analysis. Despite this, the prosecution maintained that Gabe's expenditure was an attempt to avoid suspicion, as he could not assume he would be believed. The prosecutor also disputed the fact that Gabe, who had a degree in drowning rescue, was unable to save his wife. Gabe addressed the jury, reflecting on the past 7 years since the tragedy. He expressed that he has thought about that terrible day every day, and the public has blamed him, calling him a murderer. Gabe noted that nobody has shown him understanding or empathy, except for his late wife's parents, who he understands will never forgive him. Gabe acknowledged that he can be accused of not doing enough to save his wife, Tina, but he believes he has already been punished for that. He stated that he was afraid to die and wanted to live, which is why he didn't drown with his wife 7 years ago. Gabe emphasized that he still wants to live now. The court found no evidence of Gabe's guilt, and the jury declared him not guilty. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sandra Cantu. Sandra Cantu was an 8-year-old girl who lived with her mother, Maria Chavez, and their family in the Orchard Estates mobile home park in Tracy, California. Despite her parents being separated, Sandra remained close to her father and enjoyed a positive relationship with him. Sandra was a friendly and energetic child who loved playing with her friends in the neighborhood. She was known for her bright smile and optimistic outlook, making her a favorite among her peers and the adults who knew her. At the time, she was a second-grade student at Melville S. Jacobson Elementary School. On March 27, 2009, Sandra returned home from school around 2 p.m. and went out to play with her friends. Her mother, Maria, usually let her play outside until dinner time. However, when Sandra failed to return home by 7 p.m., Maria began to worry. Maria tried to locate Sandra by calling her friends, but none of them had seen her. She then drove around the neighborhood, asking people if they had seen Sandra, but no one had any information. At 7:53 p.m., Maria called 911 to report her daughter missing. The Tracy Police Department quickly responded to the mobile home park and launched a search operation. They asked Maria to describe Sandra's clothing, which included a pink Hello Kitty shirt, black leggings, and Hannah Montana flip-flops. The police then went door to door, questioning neighbors and showing Sandra's picture to gather information. The search for Sandra was a large-scale operation that involved the FBI, cadaver dogs, helicopters, and a team of volunteers. The police showed Sandra's photos to everyone in the community, hoping to find any leads. However, their initial efforts yielded no results. Police are worried, as Sandra always followed safety rules when leaving with her family. They suspect someone familiar might have lured her. Initially, they suspect her father Daniel, who hadn't seen her in a long time, and was in a financial dispute with her mother Maria. However, he's eventually cleared. The police then focus on an unfamiliar ice cream vendor and Frank Waller, a rumored pedophile who allegedly kissed Sandra 2 years prior. Frank admits to being attracted to young girls, but is eventually eliminated. Authorities will continue to monitor him. As the search continues, the community supports Maria. During a vigil, a neighbor finds a disturbing handwritten note near a mailbox and shares it with the officers. A cryptic message was discovered, stating, "Cantu locked in stolen suitcase, thrown in water on Bachet Road and Whitehall Road. Witness." The note's spelling mistakes and suspicious appearance raised questions about its authenticity and the intentions of its writer. Investigators needed more information and decided to interview Melissa, Sandra's neighbor and a Sunday school teacher at her grandfather's church. Melissa explained that she had recently gone through a divorce and a breakup, and now lived with her grandparents and her 5-year-old daughter. Sandra and her sisters often visited Melissa's trailer to play with her daughter, which created a close bond between the two families. When Melissa was questioned, she admitted that she didn't notice anything unusual when she found the note, and she allowed the FBI to search her car. Inside the glove compartment, they found a note with scribbled words, suggesting someone tried to conceal the message. The note was sent for further analysis, and Melissa was released. Weeks passed without any sign of Sandra, but her case took a shocking turn when her body was found inside a black suitcase in an irrigation pond. The suitcase had floated to the surface after the pond was filled 2 weeks prior. Sandra's body was identified by the clothes she was wearing, and an autopsy revealed that she had many cuts and wounds. The suitcase was locked and had an extra cord securing it, indicating that the killer wanted to keep it closed for a longer time. The grim discovery left everyone in shock and horror. The farmer who found the suitcase, Jose Luis Franco, was rewarded $20,000 for alerting the authorities. The autopsy revealed that Sandra had been severely assaulted, with no signs of biological fluids, but indications of an unknown object being used. The cause of death was asphyxiation, and a high dose of alprazolam was found in her system, suggesting she had been drugged. The official cause of death was ruled as homicidal asphyxiation. Tragically, it was determined that Sandra had been murdered just hours after she was last seen on surveillance footage, sending shockwaves through the community. The investigation revealed that Sandra's killer was not a random abductor, but someone she knew. The police pieced together a profile of their potential suspect. A white male, aged between 25 and 40, with a history of sexual assault or possessing child abuse material. The investigation took a surprising turn when a neighbor reported seeing a dark purple, two-toned SUV near the irrigation pond on the day Sandra disappeared. The car's unusual color and unfamiliarity in the area raised suspicions, and the neighbor's description matched a woman named Melissa Huckabee. Surveillance cameras showed Melissa getting into her SUV near Sandra's house around 3:30 p.m. and then driving towards her own house. She was later seen near the pond around 5:30 p.m. This timeline placed Melissa in the area around the time Sandra went missing, making her a prime suspect. However, when the police approached Melissa, they found that she had attempted suicide by ingesting razor blades and was hospitalized. When questioned later, Melissa claimed she was unaware of what had transpired and had only brought a note to the attention of the authorities. She denied any involvement in Sandra's murder. The police investigated Melissa's alibi and found that her phone records were crucial evidence. Earlier, Melissa had reported a theft to the police, claiming that her suitcase was stolen from her driveway around 4 p.m. She even sent a text message to Maria, mentioning the stolen suitcase. This was significant because the suitcase found with Sandra's body matched the one Melissa reported stolen. Despite the evidence, the authorities wanted more information, so they wiretapped Melissa's phone and waited for her hospital release. When she was released, they were shocked to discover that she had called the Canto family. Melissa invited one of Sandra's siblings to her home, but when the police responded, they found no children, suggesting that Melissa might have been planning to lure another child to her house. A neighbor then came forward, revealing that Melissa had taken a 7-year-old girl to the park without permission, and she was found to have been drugged with benzodiazepines, the same drug found in Sandra's body. The police suspicion of Melissa grew, and they discovered a notebook in her trailer with handwriting matching the note she claimed to have found. They also found a cryptic note in her car and a drug prescribed to her that matched the one in Sandra's body. During a search of her grandparents' church, they found a rolling pin with blood that matched Sandra's DNA profile and a window blind missing a draw cord, which matched the cord used to secure the suitcase. This led to Melissa's arrest on suspicion of kidnapping and murder. Melissa Huckabee, a California woman, has been accused of killing 8-year-old Sandra Cantu and faces multiple charges, including sexual assault. Authorities do not expect to make any further arrests in the case. When questioned by investigators, Huckabee initially denied any involvement, but later claimed that Sandra's death was an accident. She said she was playing a game of hide-and-seek with Sandra and her own daughter, and Sandra agreed to hide in a suitcase. Huckabee claimed she forgot Sandra was inside and only remembered when she arrived at a church, finding Sandra's lifeless body. Huckabee eventually confessed to zipping Sandra into the suitcase and leaving her there until it was too late. She then dumped the suitcase containing Sandra's body into a nearby pond. Further investigation into Huckabee's personal life revealed a troubled past, including criminal activities, depression, and other mental health issues. She had a history of theft convictions and had filed for bankruptcy due to credit card debt and medical expenses. Huckabee's family members, including her father and ex-husband, described her as struggling with depression and having issues with her self-image. Despite this, they said she was not prone to violent behavior. Huckabee is currently under suicide watch and faces multiple charges related to Sandra's death. The trial of Melissa Huckabee began on April 14th. During the proceedings, she became emotional when the prosecution described her criminal actions. She closed her eyes and struggled to hold back tears. Prosecutor Thomas Tester presented evidence that Melissa had planned Sandra's murder. Surveillance footage showed that Sandra had intended to visit Melissa's house. The prosecutor alleged that Melissa took Sandra to a church, where she gave her juice laced with a powerful sedative. Once Sandra was unconscious, Melissa attacked and suffocated her to death. Initially, the prosecutors sought the death penalty against Melissa, as she had not yet pleaded guilty to the crimes. However, during the trial, Melissa made a sudden decision to plead guilty, taking full responsibility for her actions. Before accepting her plea, Judge Linda Luss questioned Melissa to ensure she had discussed the matter with her lawyers and was certain about giving up her right to a jury trial. Melissa confirmed that she was resolute in her decision. Prosecutor Thomas Tester raised concerns about Melissa Huckabee's mental state after Judge Luss finished questioning her. He cited her unusual behavior in prison, including a self-harm incident, which made him question her ability to make rational decisions. Although Melissa seemed coherent in court, Tester worried about her decision-making in the long run. Despite Judge Luss's reassurance, Tester asked Melissa if she understood the situation, likely fearing she might retract her guilty plea. Melissa's admission of guilt marked a significant turning point in the case, bringing some closure to the Cantu family and avoiding a lengthy trial. This crucial moment simplified the legal proceedings and provided the Cantu family with some comfort after Sandra's tragic death. It also paved the way for what would happen next in the case. On June 14, 2010, Melissa Huckabee was sentenced to life in prison without parole for the intentional and premeditated murder of Sandra Cantu. The prosecution alleged three special circumstances in this case. Firstly, it was alleged that Huckabee committed the murder while kidnapping Sandra Cantu, a violation of Penal Code Sections 207 and 209. Secondly, it was alleged that Huckabee committed the murder while engaged in another crime. Thirdly, it was alleged that Huckabee committed the murder during or immediately after attempting to commit rape by instrument, a violation of Penal Code Section 289, as defined in Penal Code Section 1.2. The prosecution has warned that any evidence presented at a preliminary hearing may also be used in future probation violation proceedings or discovery requests. Melissa Huckabee is accused of murdering Sandra Cantu and initially faced additional charges for drugging a 7-year-old girl, although these charges were later dropped as part of a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. Melissa has pleaded guilty to the first-degree murder and kidnapping of Sandra Cantu. Her heinous crime against a young girl in Tracy, California shocked the nation, and today the court will determine her punishment. This morning, there will be 2 hearings related to the Sandra Cantu murder case. The first hearing will focus on Melissa's sentencing, followed by a decision on whether to lift the gag order. Our correspondent, Latia Ara, is reporting live from outside the San Joaquin County Courthouse in Stockton, where it promises to be a very busy day. In just 3 hours, Melissa Huckabee will be formally sentenced for the murder and kidnapping of 8-year-old Sandra Cantu. The community and Sandra's family are eager for the proceedings to come to an end. Last month, Melissa pleaded guilty and will likely spend the rest of her life in prison without parole. As part of her plea deal, the rape charge against Melissa was dropped, sparing her from the death penalty. During her sentencing, Melissa expressed remorse and confusion over her actions, directly addressing Sandra's mother. She acknowledged that she couldn't understand her own motivations, saying that she wished she could give an explanation for what had happened, and that she still couldn't understand why she had done what she had done. Melissa also apologized, saying that for the pain she had caused, saying sorry wasn't enough, but it was all she could do. She added that since the day Sandra had died, she had had to live with the consequences of her actions, and that for the rest of her life, she would have to live with the responsibility of Sandra's death. Sandra's father expressed his struggle to forgive Melissa, saying that they were supposed to forgive their enemies, but he didn't know what to make of her. He added that nothing that happened that day would change the fact that she had taken the life of an innocent little girl who hadn't even gotten to decide what ice cream to eat. The community was deeply affected by Sandra's tragic death. On April 16, 2019, over 600 people attended her funeral to pay their respects. To honor her memory, volunteers planted a tree and built a new playground at Jacobson Elementary School, and one of her cousins started an annual celebration called Tracy Celebrates Children, which helps local kids get fingerprinted and photographed in case they go missing. The prosecutors believed that Melissa deliberately planned and executed the tragic event, but she never shared her motives, leaving investigators baffled. Melissa's past struggles with depression, difficult history, and self-harm were revealed in documents, but they didn't provide a clear explanation for her actions. Melissa is now serving a life sentence in San Juan County Jail, a constant reminder that serious crimes have serious consequences. While the pain of losing Sandra will never fully heal, her family finds solace in knowing that justice has been served, and her death did not go unanswered.